Hi, George. Okay.
There we go. Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm not hearing anything.
You're not hearing me?
Now I am.
Okay, welcome everybody. I see a number of you just logging in now. We're just going to wait a moment before we get started here. We've got a large number of people joining us today, which is very exciting. Okay, everyone, I'm Derek Auger. I'm the Executive Director with Conservatory Canada. Welcome to this Friday teacher webinar. And this week we have George Litterst of TimeWarp Technologies and Christopher Norton, composer, to talk about Chris's essential guides. They're going to walk you through all of that as they pertain to the SuperScore app that's developed by TimeWarp. And I'll just make everyone aware we've got a webinar series continues next Friday. We're going to have 3 weeks with Deborah Wanless, where she's going to talk about her text that she authored this year, An Introduction to Basic Harmony. This goes with CC Theory 5, and it's a great companion to that course. She's going to break it down over 3 weeks and talk about voice leading the first week. And then in a subsequent week, she's going to talk about the counterpoint question, as well as creating piano accompaniments and a few more things. I've got a more detailed outline in your inbox for those of you that get my regular emails and on Facebook. Feel free to check out the detail there. I know a number of you have already registered for those. And so we look forward to seeing you for the next 3 weeks with Deborah Wanless starting next Friday. And most of you have seen Chris and George on these webinars before. Thank you too for coming back and giving us ideas. I'm really looking forward to these essential guides and seeing what they're all about. So I'll turn this over to you. If anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A box, and I'll be in the chat box monitoring that if anyone has any questions there. So George, Chris, go ahead and take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm George Litterst, and I'm coming to you from the little town of Rehoboth, Massachusetts on the East Coast, where we're bracing for a big snowstorm this weekend, 2 to 3 feet, I'm told. And my colleague Chris, well, people often associate him with Australia, New Zealand, England, Canada. I don't even know where he is today. Where are you?
No, I'm always these days in Canada. I've been stuck in Canada since the beginning of the pandemic, very happily, I must say. But Stratford in the east of Canada, which is again quite snowbound at the moment, nothing like as bad as a storm as you're threatened with, I think, George.
Well, that's good. Well, it's been a pleasure of mine, a very great pleasure in the last several years to be working very closely with Chris, bringing his materials into the SuperScore application on the iPad, where the materials are interactive, the backing tracks are embedded right there in the score, and there's amazing things that you can do with this incredible material. So before we just launch into the material, I wanted to let you know where you would find it. Right now we're looking at the cover of his Essential Guide to Pop Styles, a volume we're going to be covering today. It's in the SuperScore app, and you'll notice in the top area there is a shopping cart button, and when you tap on that button you do go to the store inside of SuperScore. And the question you'll be asking yourself, of course, is, well, where do I find these materials in the store? So when the store comes up, we're going to see a list of publishers, and you'll find Chris's materials in 2 places. If you go to CN Connections Music, that is Chris's publishing company, and that's where you find the Christopher Norton Connections in the SuperScore edition. If you go over to Boosey and Hawkes, this is where you will find a growing collection of his albums from Boosey, including the top 3 here, which are the essential guides to jazz styles, Latin styles, and pop styles. And these were materials that he wrote way back in the 90s that are being reformatted and re-released by Boosey and Hawkes. And I'm rather excited to say that we are debuting them here before Boosey is in SuperScore on the iPad. So Chris is about to show you the first piece here, and the really noteworthy thing I want to emphasize, and then I'll kind of get out of the way here, is from my perspective as a teacher, these guides to the pop styles, jazz styles, and Latin styles are amazingly educational. In my case, and it's probably the case for many of you, I came from a very classical tradition, And of course, I've heard these styles in more pop-oriented performance venues and on the radio and so forth. But to really know and understand those styles, well, that was never part of my upbringing. So with each one of these styles, Chris gives very clear explanations that aren't very long in terms of what rhythmically and harmonically constitutes the style, and then we get over to a piece of music in that style. And the pieces are typically not very long, and they give you in a very brief, almost stylistic etude kind of context, an opportunity to get your hands on this style, digest it musically yourself with your own fingers, and you're supported by the stylistically accurate backing tracks, and it's just an amazing experience. So here's the first style, Chris, adult-oriented rock. Honestly, before I saw this publication of yours, I didn't even know the term. What is it about?
Well, as it says in the music examples, things like Toto or Journey, it's kind of classic rock of a certain style, mostly what you call 8-beat rock. So the snare is on the 2 and 4. And the piano accompaniment to this is very, very simple. It's quite fun to play. Has a very open sound. And what you can do with the Superscore file, of course, is you can play that accompaniment with the track. It's very nice to do. The Superscore also includes the piano part and the guitar part, so you're hearing both, but you can button them out if you want to. So having just showed you sort of a little bit of the feel of that, I think I'll get George to play you the entire track. Can you do this? Yes, while people can see the music.
Something's happened with our sound and screen sharing. Give me a second to reshare the screen. Pardon me for that.
So while George is talking about that, the tune itself. So you can tell you could quite easily just pick out the tune and play the left hand, and you get quite an effective thing to do as well. Not that many of the pieces have separate parts for the tune and the piano, but there are a few where I felt it was better to have the tune separate from the piano accompaniment, if you like. So let's see if we hear it this time.
Okay, I think I had another program that was maybe interfering. Having a
So this is exciting. Here it comes.
But we don't have the sound. I apologize. Give me a second to leave Zoom and come right back in. I'll be right back with you.
But in fact, while George is doing that, I'll play it off my iPad. It won't be as good a sound, but I think I can hear, you can hear this in my room. Oh yes. Now you can hear me when I went on the repeat. I did this, which has that real. You recognize. I think you'll all recognize that style. Nice and easy to play, and everybody likes it, I think. So George, any luck?
Well, we'll try it again. Derek will need to re-enable the screen sharing for me.
I've meanwhile played the piece through, so people are hearing different versions of it, which is quite nice.
Okay. Zoom is just not giving me any audio. Honestly, I am a bit at a loss. Um, I think I'm going to need to just plain restart and come back in because we tested this 5 minutes before we're starting. So, Chris, I'm out again. And I'll be back.
Okay, well, let me talk a little bit further about the project as you're doing that, George. And Derek,
Yeah, I'm here.
was that reasonably clear what I was playing? Could you hear that
Yeah,
through?
that's coming through nice. Yeah, I know George
Yeah.
would.
Okay. So that's adult-oriented rock. I've got the super score version of this in front of me on my iPad, and I'm just going to go now to Big Band, and yes. So this is another one where it has notes about the piece, which says. The most obvious characteristic of the style is the swing rhythm on hi-hat or ride cymbal. That is the famous pea soup kind of hi-hat where the hi-hat's playing triplets, and it has a 4.5 walking bass. And in the music, you'll actually see those demonstrated very clearly because the bass part is separated from the piano part. So you've got a separate bass part for this one. And then the piano has lovely light fills. And some of the examples, by the way, that I've given here are by Count Basie, by Benny Goodman, Map the Knife by Kurt Weill, Wood Chopper's Ball by Woody Herman, and In the Bag from the Microstyles collection by me. But the actual piano part for the big band sounds like this. So it's very syncopated, but the bass part. So it's a nice jazz chord progression. All the chord symbols are written there as well, and you could actually just outline the chords and again jam along with this. This product is ideal for jamming with, and you can take the music as written because it's not too hard, but you can actually also use it just playing the chords. The first chord that's written down is C major 7, and then B minor 7, and then E7 flat 9, A minor 7, and then G minor 7, and then C9, I think. So you can tell it's a classic jazz chord progression there. And the backing is actually a full big band. So I'm going to play you what this sounds like on the backing now. So that's a lot of fun to play as well, and I would say that's probably grade 2 or 3. It's one of the slightly harder ones, but none of the pieces in this Essential Guide to Pop Styles are particularly hard to play. So I think that's another thing which you might find quite useful, is that even quite young students could be given that with the Superstar and say, just work your way through. You can slow them down if you want to. The next one I'm just going to glance at is Boogie 8-Beat. Now, this is the famous... So the baby elephant walk kind of style, and it mentions the fact that the bass in this one is actually using fifths and sixths. Now I'm just going to pull this up on my screen again just to make sure. Oh yeah, it's an E major. Of course, it's not so much Baby Elephant Walk as Batman, the original Batman music. So that's where that's come from, and the piano part sounds like this. So even as a solo piano piece, that's quite a lot of fun for students to play. It says 116 for the tempo, so it's not particularly fast. The left hand, you could actually give to one player, in other words, do it as a duet quite quickly, and the right hand has all these grace notes, and I'm dropping on those with my hand, very much using arm weight. So again, lots of little interesting piano playing things to do on that. But when you put the backing with this, you can hear this in the background. Hopefully, this sounds like this. So it's got that lovely music guitar and the really straight ahead 2 and 4 on the drums. So George, how have you gone? Do you think it's happy now?
Well, I went and did a test prior to joining back in, and I was good.
Yeah.
Which piece are you on to, Chris?
I'm on to Boogie 8-beat.
Okay.
And it's quite nice if people can then see it on the screen here as well. I've played some of the piano part, and I played a bit of it. Yeah, so that is very characteristic of that style. But of course, it's not hard to play, but it's great for the students to hear it, because that means they're kind of half playing it by ear when they try and play that very syncopated figure. George.
Yeah, and I have to say, Chris, that having the backing tracks really enables one to go from the notation to the feeling of the rhythm. Whereas when you're all by yourself and you're thinking 1 and 2 and 3, and there's something very mechanical about counting it. But when you feel it, it's a whole different ball game for sure.
Yeah. So now, country rhythm and blues is the next thing which George has brought up, and there are some country styles in this as well, which is rather fun. And when you look at the notes on it, it's in 3/4. Well, I say it's in 4/4, of course. But do da da do da da do da on the hi hat, and the drumming part, and this is alternating bass drum and rim shot, or you could use tambourine, and talks a little about the electric guitar as well. But the actual piano piece for this, which I'm just going to bring up here, yes, is rather nice, very easy. So that's a nice little piece to play by itself. It sounded really nice on electric piano as well. And there's chord symbols above there. If you had a guitar player playing with you, you can see it's just G, C, G, C, C, D, and there's a rather dramatic E minor A7. But it's basically 1, 2, 4, 5, 1. I think there's no great thing. But when you get the backing, suddenly the whole style comes out into the open. Here it is. So you've got a sort of strummed acoustic guitar part, but you also got electric guitar going chuck, like offbeats. So, and then you hear the drum parts, and you can, of course, on SuperScore, you can isolate the drums and the bass and so on. George, do you want to just even play us a little bit of the drums and then a little bit of the steel string guitar? Is that easy?
Sure. So we can just mute those parts. Do you want to keep the piano in the mix?
No, let's just have the drums, in fact. So here's the drum part. Okay, and then I think the pedal steel.
Okay.
Now that seems to be the acoustic guitar, so that may be a misnomer there. But let's have a look, because we've got jazz guitar. Try jazz guitar, because I think that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking pedal steel, but that's of course steel string guitar. I'm hoping for a pedal steel player, but in fact we've got jazz guitar. There we go.
A lot of bent notes in there.
Yeah, there's lots of note bending, because the programming for the Superscore Essential Guide to Pop Styles and the other ones as well was all done by a wonderful world-class programmer back in the 1990s. And the interesting thing about the Essential Guides, which some of you may have come across the name before, but they've never been available before with audio other than MIDI file discs, which most people don't have. Or don't have access to MIDI file players. So this has been a way of bringing very, very good quality data back into the light, if you like, because for decades this book has kind of languished with people thinking, what are these discs? But now they can hear the actual parts. Now we're going to go into something rather dramatic. This is a style called dance. So this is not like ballroom dancing. This is like dance from the 80s. And in fact, there's the drum machine score. So that gives you a clue. It's actually a drum machine score, not a drum score. So this is electronic dance, like the disco kind of craze of the 80s. It's rather like that. And in fact, the titles that are marked down, that some of you, if you're a certain age, will recognize. One is Ride on Time by Red Box, for instance. But here's what it looks like. Now, and various by S Express, 2 Unlimited. These are all kind of bands which popularized this style way back. Now, if you play this on the piano, which is rather fun, it goes. So you all recognize that became a very popular style in this kind of dance music of that era, usually played by a fairly hard sounding electric piano or piano with a very hard sound, if you like. Speed it up a bit, add the backing track to it, and you get this effect. Strings. Brass, I mean. Now, how many students have had a chance, or indeed teachers, a chance to play in that kind of style, a piece this short, if you like? Most of the time they're 3 minutes long at least, but this is just a little sort of snippet of a style which you can play around with and get used to. So you can see already with the country one we've just done and the boogie one, that this is a very, very wide-ranging book in terms of the styles which you're learning and being able to play around with. So what comes up next, George? Disco. So this is actual disco, and the drums are playing what's called a pea soup fashion, where you have an open hi-hat a closed hi-hat followed by an open hi-hat, and a very straightforward 4 and a bar on the bass drum and 2 and 4 on the side drum. You can see that there, and the underneath part always sounds like this. I always think Donna Summer the moment I hear that kind of bass line. Here's what the piano part looks like. So there we are, and we've even got examples there from microjazz as well. Now this is another one where we've got the tune separated from the piano part, and the piano part is immediately a fun thing to try and do rhythmically. And so on. So that's fine, but it's much easier once you've got the whole backing playing. So here's what the whole thing sounds like with the string lead. So,
Wonderful.
out on the dance floor. Now, there are two disco pieces, and I thought this was quite fun. And this is the one with the more sort of obvious 8-beat left hand, like this thing here. And we just play a bit of this track, George, because it is quite fun to hear. It's a different disco style. I'll join in. It's a very classic disco ending there. So there's two examples there where students who perhaps still, I mean, I've discovered quite young students like disco still. It's obviously played on classics radio quite a lot still. So it's quite fun to have relatively easy pieces you can play with a authentic backing track in these kind of classic styles. Because I think disco is now a classic style, isn't it, George?
Well, it is, and I tell my students that it's one style in which beats 2 and 4 don't have to feel like they're a second-class citizen compared to beats 1 and 3.
Absolutely, absolutely. So here's doo-wop rock. Now this is a common style of the 1950s, and doo-wop comes from the vocal expressions which you use with those words in it. If you look at the drum pattern there again, it's a 12/8 pattern, quite a straightforward pattern to play. And again, getting students to try and tap with you versions of that to go boom, tap, boom, tap, boom, and the other part going and then the piano, it says, tends to play the 12/8 rhythm. And if you look, Blueberry Hill by L. Lewis, I'm just looking at the examples there, but going on to the piano part, you can see the piano's doing this. But the underneath part is what really makes it. And so on. And then the lead instrument is playing the tune, which is in this case is an alto sax. So what more can I say? This is again a classic style which a lot of students quite like to play, but you don't see it written down that much, especially over like a course of 16 bars or whatever. So it's nice to just have a little snippet of this style, if you like, which feels authentic, which you can play around with and hear the different parts on Superscore and so on. The Superscore version of this actually has a vocal sound on there, which is quite fun as well. So you'll enjoy exploring the underneath parts. Now we're coming on to funk. Now I played in a lot of funk bands, and broadly speaking, I regard funk as music which has 16th note syncopation. So a lot of music of this particular era, you can hear it's not going. It's going and the syncopations are using those 16th notes. I worked with a very good West Indian musician when I was in London, and he once said he only thought in 16th notes. He was surprised how so much rock music in particular seems wedded to eighths. He said we have got so used to thinking in 16. Now the famous examples of this include pieces by Stevie Wonder, James Brown, Stevie Wonder again, and Average White Band pick up the pieces, and Cops and Robbers from Micro Jazz Collection 3. Now that has got a great funk backing track as well. But what we'll do this time is play the backing first. So George is taking, yeah. And so on. So you can hear that that's got a lot of sort of funky things going on there. And it's a part a bit like a clavinet. I think it might be marked as a clavinet, but it's a very spiky keyboard, which is very popular, particularly in Superstition by Stevie Wonder. Here it is with the piano part in as well. Now, it's
So,
very
Chris,
go on.
I was going to say, one of the things that jumps out at me here with this piece and so many of the others, over the years I've had any number of students who in either very late middle school or high school have wanted to join the jazz band in school. And their experience playing there is often quite a bit different from what they've had with me in terms of their regular piano lessons. And they're often thrown a chord chart, and we have to get into how to read a chord chart. And what I like about these pieces is you can start with a notation, but then begin to correlate the chord symbols to the way that they're rendered here in your scores, and start to learn it that way.
Yes, and you notice a lot of funk music has sharp 9 chords, which is basically a 7 chord, like an A7, but with a C natural at the top. So you've actually got a major third and a minor third in the same chord. And again, students like the sound of those, but I can't think they necessarily get that many opportunities to play them. So this is a great opportunity to kind of stretch them out in directions which they might know orally, but have never actually felt under their fingers before. Now, this is a very interesting one. This is a Blues Brothers kind of style. I mean, these are all very broad styles, but they are definitely recognizable. I think you'd agree. This is very fast style indeed, and the drums look quite straightforward. You look at the bass drum, it goes dum, 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 and the snare drum, boom, cha, boom, cha, boom, cha, boom, cha, and hi-hat, ch, 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 ch. But then you've got tambourine going, tick, 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 tick. So we put all those things together, and you've got the sort of basis of this style. What happens next? It says the melody would sound effective on Hammond organ, which I've done on the recording, and it's got lots of glissandi and grace notes and flourishes. And there's a piano rhythm there, which is dun 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 ding ding ding. You have to get used to that, but in fact, when you put it all together, you get this effect. Now, one of the things you'll have noticed, which is particularly amazing about Superscore, is it's doing all the it's got a lot of geography involved. You've actually got repeats, then you're going back to the beginning, and then you're going to the coda, and all the jumps are being done for you. So the page, you don't have to worry about a multiplicity of page turns. And I was quite interested because when I was playing for you before, I was seeing too much on the screen because I had it on in landscape. So I turned the iPad round, and suddenly I was seeing it in portrait. So that, again, can be quite useful because you can see the whole piece on one page if you're in portrait. Not that entirely matters, but it's quite fun for the program to be actually showing you what the geography means. Is that a good point to make, George?
Oh, absolutely. And as far as the screen real estate goes, not only can you rotate your iPad at will, but if you didn't feel it was necessary as you're learning your part to be reading the rock organ part, you could just reduce it down to
the piano part.
Piano part, and so here's the entire piano part in landscape, for example.
And if I then play that from the piano, so see, that's a tricky little part to play, but in fact, it's not really tricky. What I'm saying is, it just takes a bit of getting used to, but then you have to speed it up. And here, you're getting in preparation for the Tchaikovsky First Piano Concerto there, or some other virtuoso repertoire. What I'm saying is, there's a lot of fun piano playing aspects to these as well, which I think students will enjoy. But as I said, it's a great project for giving the student the iPad app and just saying to them, just play around with as many styles as you know. Try 4 styles a day and just play a little around with them. Don't necessarily, play it at speed. You could slow it down or whatever. But it's a great repository of styles all in one place.
Well, Chris, there's a famous, well, maybe it's not so famous story. Tchaikovsky was working with one of his piano students who had trouble with his concerto, and he said, I want you to wait 100 years. There's going to be this new style called gospel. Master that, and then come back and play my concerto.
Yeah, that's an apocryphal story, I think, but it is a good one. Now, we've got to heavy rock, which is, everybody was hoping this might come in. This time, the hi-hat is open all the time. So it's going, it's quite an aggressive effect straight away. And the bass drum, boom, 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 boom. But how fast is this? Let's just have a look. But that's the drum score. Again, you can look at that, and then you got the bass part. Oh, yes. So that's called a riff. Where you have a really catchy bass line, which basically is very repetitive. There's lots of pieces by Deep Purple, Little Angels, and here's what the piece looks like. Now, if I just play a bit of the piano part. I like the fact that that's got all those very bare sounds as well. It's got lots of bare fourths in the right hand and unison passage and so on. When you put it all together, you get this rather heavy effect. Now, even in my little room here, I'm going do 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 and putting my hands up like this and looking for adulation from the crowd out there. You can tell that the 8-year-old boys will be very, or 8-year-old girls indeed, will be very pleased with that. By the way, talking about 8-year-old girls, I had a very heavy rock piece in one of my books. I did a masterclass on it, and a little 8-year-old girl, a very sweet little girl, came up and played the piece and did it quite well. And I said, "Why did you choose this piece?" She said, "My brother plays the guitar. I wanted to find something to annoy him." So this is a good piece to annoy your brother with. Now, house is another disco style. I think we can probably take that as read, George, and move on from that one.
Okay.
We don't need to look at absolutely all. That's what it looks like. It's rather similar to the kind of dance style we had before. Pop ballad, which is the next one up. This is nice. There's a lot of pieces in this style. This is a 16th note style as well. And you've got a picture of the drum patterns, but this is, if you just play this on the piano, it's a lovely style. Yep, it's in the style of Jane's song from Connections 8, which has been a longer fixture on the RCM syllabus as well as on others. So this is a very classic style. Here it is with the full band playing. Yeah, that's a classic style, isn't it? You can hear there's various songs are suggested by that. Now, this has got some interesting notes in pop rock, as it says the bass part is likely to be played by heavy electric guitar and bass guitar playing the same things as pop rock. Chords played in a fat synthesizer, sound probably a brass setting, and again, a drum score is given to you here, which is worth looking at, but it's very straightforward. Eye of the Tiger, The Final Countdown, and various by Phil Collins. So you can see there's lots of examples. Now, I really like this one, and this is a style which most teenage boys or boys of about 12, like my grandson, if they try to write their own pieces, often they write them in this kind of style. So it's a good jumping off point for trying your own things out as well. And so on. So you get the idea. I mean, kids love to do that. Moving quickly on to reggae, this is very different. And when I first heard reggae, Bob Marley in particular, I thought, what am I hearing here? Because everything seemed to be upside down. The bass drum was on the offbeat instead of the onbeat for a start. And you can see in the example here, you've got t t t t t t t, but the bass drum goes do 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 and then it's got various notes about the drums. What does it say on the next page here, George, about the style? Or is that pretty much it for that one?
Sorry.
Yeah, so this is famous, and often it's kind of pentatonic that you're using as well as a scale. And the bass part is playing fairly straightforwardly on the beat. Put all that together and you get this effect. So again, that's really fun to try and play that. Rhythm and blues shuffle. Everybody knows what a shuffle is when they hear it. This is a 12/8 style, and you can see the bass parts going dum 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 dum. And the moment I do that, you're thinking of all sorts of pop styles, are you? There's the drum parts. Suggests pieces by Muddy Waters, B.B. King, etc. What about this? This is electric guitar doubling the piano. Again, instantly recognizable as a style. So rock and roll. Again, you can go straight onto the backing for this, George. You can see straight away what I've done with this. Look at that.
I'll just
Yeah.
abbreviate it in the interest of time.
Yep, that's fine. But you get the idea. Now, how many styles are there in the pop book altogether?
Each of these three books has at least 24 pieces, and some go up to 30.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think this is the longest one because it's got a lot of styles. Looking at the ones that you've got here, slow blues. So let's just see the screen and then move on to the next one. Just showing you what we've got in these. And the final one, which I should show you this because this is so amazing. No student you've ever come across would have played this before in a piano lesson. This is thrash metal, which is played as fast as possible and as dissonantly as possible as well, like this. So that's a very dramatic end to our demonstration of the pop book, isn't it? So you
So,
can
Chris,
see, yes,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no,
Finish
you
your
go
thought.
ahead.
Well, it was going to be moving us toward the next segment here. I wanted to point out to everybody that the pop um album includes some pieces that we've not shown you that are in some jazz styles and in some Latin styles. And then Chris's next two books are completely focused to those styles, and we thought we'd give you a bit of a taste of each of those albums.
So the Essential Guide to Jazz Styles covers early jazz right through to very contemporary jazz, and really in the time we've got, um, it's got lots of interesting examples. But this is a great example of an early big band style. I really like this one. It's a real fast piece as well. And so on. Now, the jazz pieces and the Latin pieces are harder. There's no getting around it than the pop book, but they're still quite playable. And of course, you don't have to take them at speed. That's particularly relevant when it gets to things like bebop, because this piece called Bow Plastic is a bebop piece, which is immensely fast, but it's supposed to be fast. But quite fun to see it written down. It's very short, and you can, of course, on SuperScore play at any speed you like. So you can go if you want to, but here's what it does sound like.
Well,
Yeah.
I do think the tempo control for learning purposes is extremely important. And how often would you be able to hire musicians to willing to practice with you this tempo?
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, it's wonderful for that. And I think the final example we've got in the jazz book, just because we're giving you a quick overview, is like Jamiroquai. Some of you will know Jamiroquai, but it's a very contemporary jazz style, which is kind of influenced by funk. And I really like the effect of this style.
And
Yeah.
Chris, one of the things that I like is the breadth of experiences you've provided in this book. That there are some of these pieces the pianist gets to play the tune, and they're more like the soloist in the group. And in other cases like this, they've got a comping role.
And it's a
providing harmony to the bass line.
it's a totally written out comp part there, so it's a very useful thing to see. I think just what the piano part might play if you're accompanying that tune.
And then you can imagine eventually getting to a chart where you're going to look at somebody else's melody and chord symbols and need to come up with a part
Yeah.
that's kind of
At
like
least
this.
you've got some licks under your fingers, if you like. And then quickly going on to the Latin book, this is even more kind of sophisticated, if you like. And we just got a couple of examples of this to show you. It talks quite a bit about learning Latin rhythms. Look at these rhythms. I mean, some of them you'll think, what is that? Garacha, Pachanga 1, Mozambique. So they're quite specialist. And I worked with a specialist Latin drummer for this, so they are very authentic. And it's even got examples like, this is one, the Begin. Besame Mucho is a famous example. Begin the Begin by Cole Porter. And this is a lovely little piano piece. Look at this. And so on. When you put that down with the backing, you get a lovely suave effect, which is very characteristic of the style. and so on. So that's a suave style. Now this is a very fast piece, and this originally appeared, I think, in Micro Jazz Duet Collection 1, or 2 rather. And it's just a lovely little tune, which I think it's nice for you to hear in a calypso style. I like the way that piece kind of goes down the plug hole, the water disappears, and you're left with an empty sink. So, and then rumba. This is one that George and I particularly liked as a piece, and I thought we'd finish with this because, in fact, what I haven't mentioned to you, listeners, is that I'm cleaning my car off and taking my wife to the dentist, so I have to make a fairly quick getaway on the hour. But we've managed to give you a good overview of these 3 wonderful publications, and I do recommend that you get them all because between them all, you yourself, as well as your students, will learn a terrific number of new styles in relatively playable format, if you like. Here's Rumba 1.
And this is my favorite in the group.
So,
Chris, a question for you.
yeah.
How do you help a student play measure 11?
Well, I think I'd start by slowing the whole thing. And I'm already trying to sing it, so you might say that's a good starting point as well. But everything after the first one is off the beat. And it's a really nice thing to do, and of course the backing really does help you do it. I think it's a quite a tricky thing to do just by yourself, but once you've got that whole percussion section playing with you at a slower speed, I think you'd find it would kind of come. And you're hearing it played as well if you want to hear the piano part demonstrated on the sequence.
It's a wonderful spot in the music, and you basically say to your student, here's an opportunity to play only the weakest possible 16th notes in a measure.
16th notes as well, yes, that's right. So that makes it even more fun. So anyway, I'm so pleased that these books have finally come back into circulation because they've as I said, they've not had audio available in any form other than MIDI file discs, and of course not everybody has MIDI file disc players anymore. I know some teachers do, but most people don't know what they're looking at even. So SuperScore has managed to kind of bring this data back into circulation very successfully, and of course SuperScore sounds have got better and better. So a lot of the time, I think these sounds are really quite respectable, that you're hearing, which are trumpet sounds and flute sounds and guitar sounds. Because the program we originally had a lot of pitch bend and modulation and all sorts of fancy things, which we've been able to capture. So,
well, good. Let's see. The question has come up here, and if you have to go, Chris, you please do when you need to, and I'm happy to stay around and answer questions. Nathine has asked, I missed the beginning and have to head out to another meeting before 11. Is it possible to rewatch later? I believe that Derek will be posting a link to a video replay. So, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And Miriam is asking, can we get the score for the background music? It will be fun to teach kids an ensemble.
Well, the score is on the screen, am I right? Well, actually, are you selling the MIDI files of this project as well, George?
We haven't yet, but with your permission, we will do so.
Yes, yes, because in fact, the MIDI files are the way to access the scores. You have to do a little bit of tweaking, but basically they come up in Muse Score or Sibelius or Finale pretty well if you bring up the MIDI file and say, let's have a look at the bass part,
Well,
so
actually,
or the drum part or whatever.
once we get it into a MIDI file or export the MIDI file for sale as a separate thing, which would be available at timewarptech.com, if you have our application Home Concert Extreme, you can load that MIDI file and choose any track that you wish to be turned into notation and displayed on the screen.
Yeah.
So you could do that. If you wanted to print a score, then, as you said, take it into Sibelius or Finale, and you'd be able to import it and do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
But
Very
quite a lot
good.
quite a lot of the time, the drum parts are written down, the basic pattern, and you could use that. You just say to the ensemble, here's the bass drum part, here's the snare, here's the hi-hat, and get them to play that basic pattern, and then get the piano part played with the backing, and you'd end up with a very nice sounding ensemble straight away. And of course, what happens with students, I've discovered, is that some of the musical ones start to elaborate the part they're playing slightly anyway if they're playing one of those parts. So it's an encouragement to vamp slightly.
Absolutely. Well, does anybody else have any questions they would like to ask?
It's quite a lot to take in, this, isn't it? Because it's a big project, but in fact, I think you'll find it's a very friendly project as well once you kind of dig into it.
Well, I think for me anyway, it's become an essential part of my library. It's encyclopedic, really, in terms of the range of styles that have been gathered together and done so in such a compelling and musical and helpful manner.
Absolutely. This is really great. What a great resource for our contemporary idioms piano students. And, as someone who teaches that myself in my studio as well, it's going to be great to dive into this a little deeper with students and be able to learn these riffs in the background. I can see what I'll be doing over the next month.
Yeah, it's a kind of musicianship project, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Just to have those things in your back pocket or your front pocket whenever you need them with a student or to get them to jam or something like that. It's going to be really wonderful. Anybody else have any questions for Chris or George? Chris, I know you have to run off right away now. Thanks for being here again today and
It's been great.
your music here. And George, thanks for providing the tech as always and putting together such a solid presentation as always. We'll have you both back, I'm sure, pretty soon. So we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Not seeing any other questions here at the moment in the Q&A. Thanks for answering those, George. Or in the chat box. Thanks everyone for joining us today. You'll get the replay in your inbox probably later today if I can get it processed quick enough. And then just a reminder to join us next week with Deborah Wanless, who's going to talk through some theory for those of you theory teachers out there. So thanks everyone. Hope you have a great weekend and we'll check.
Thank you, Derek.
Yep.
Very much.
Bye now.
Take care.
Thank you.